Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Ginny Davis. I'm the principal of Piedmont Hills. Welcome to this week's Zoom with the Principal. I'm sorry that I wasn't with you last week, as I did watch the recording of last week's Zoom. And as they told you, I was in Philadelphia last week for a conference about Title IX. And really about how to conduct Title IX investigations. I think maybe in the next semester, I may do a Zoom topic about Title IX and what that means for schools. But I think about that and plan that out. But that's not our topic for today. Our topic for today is executive functioning. And executive functioning is basically, to sum it up, it's the part of your brain that takes the desire to want to do something to be able to actually do it. So, you think, I want to study for this test, but then executive functioning skills are what enables you to actually do the studying and actually do it. And so what we see a lot of times with our teenagers, when they are lacking executive functioning skills, they may say the right things. They know that they need to write that paper or study for that test or, do everything that they need to, but they're not doing it and they're struggling to actually get it done. And a lot of times the reason for that is there's issues with executive functioning. I personally have 2 kids with ADHD. You see executive functioning issues oftentimes with kids that have ADHD or adults that have ADHD. It doesn't necessarily have to be, it's not only ADHD, but that's where you commonly find it. So my experience, I have 2 kids with ADHD. They both exhibit executive functioning deficiencies in very different ways. So that's another important thing that we'll talk about today is it doesn't always show up the same way in teenagers or adults for that matter. I myself have ADHD and have definite areas where I have some executive functioning weaknesses. And throughout my life, I've had to learn ways and techniques to overcome that. My husband also has, definite executive functioning deficiencies. And so he has to learn ways to overcome that. So that's a lot what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about really what it is. So you have an understanding of executive function. We're going to talk about ways that executive functioning deficiencies can manifest itself. And then we will also talk about some strategies that you as a parent can help your teenager to overcome these issues. So to start off with, I'm going to share my screen real quick. I'm going to start off by showing you guys a very quick, just couple minute video that I found on YouTube yesterday that I think was a nice little primer on what exactly is executive functioning. So let me show this to you. Oh, hold on.
There are certain foundational skills like executive function, self-regulation, that are prerequisites for the formation of complex skills like perseverance and self.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. Oh, maybe it is. Yes, sorry, it is.
Self-direction. A child can become a productive and engaged learner from any developmental starting point, as long as we intentionally build those skills.
Any volunteers? Go up and do a priority list. Abdi, thank you.
The most active research right now is actually about adolescence. There are skills that develop uniquely in adolescence that can't develop in earlier periods. An example of one of those is executive function skills, which enable us to organize and prioritize. All right. By asking students to prioritize their tasks, the teacher builds that skill set in an entire classroom.
In 8th grade, there's a ton of different deadlines and work to manage. So we do the ABC priority list in order to help them manage all those different deadlines.
somebody always goes up to start a priority list. It helps us like categorize everything that we have and like organize from most important to like, least important.
We have the West Virginia versus Barnard case questions for social studies
What does that do?
today.
So that's a high priority.
We have a practice clause that we need to do for science class.
They tell me each assignment and like when it's due or like how important it is.
We have the JIS observation for science.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
They share out all the different
Executive function, self.
I'm gonna stop. This is totally not the video that I wanted to show you. I'm sorry about that. I'm gonna go straight to my presentation. I'm sorry. I'm a mess this morning. So I have so word of warning, I'm going to be doing a lot of talking today. Please like put a question in the chat, like take yourself off of mute if you have a question. Those of you that have been with us for a few years, you probably have actually seen this presentation before. I think that that's okay. This is the type of topic that the more you learn about it, the more you understand it and the more it sinks in. I've, been learning myself, as an educator about executive functioning and really like honing in on, this deficiency with students and executive functioning probably for about 10 years now. And I feel like I'm always learning more about what this is. So really to start off, like what we're going to talk about today, we're going to explain what executive functioning is. We're going to understand the mental processes. Sorry, I've got to move you guys' faces. You guys are blocking my screen. There you go. And understand the mental processes, cognitive abilities, and skills involved with executive functioning. How deficits in executive functioning present themselves. Like I mentioned before, this could look differently with different kids. This isn't always going to manifest itself in the same way. There are some commonalities with it, but it's not always going to be exactly the same. So like I said, I have 2 kids that both in their school careers have executive functioning issues, but very different on what their struggles are. And then obviously how I had to help them as a parent was very different. And so that's the final thing. We're going to talk about like what you can do as a parent to help support the growth of executive functioning skills, because this isn't something that like if your child struggles with executive functioning, that isn't just going to magically go away. What you can do is teach them different skills and help them manage it. And so that this becomes less of an issue as they get older. So there's no like one definition of executive functioning, partly because scientists, they don't fully understand yet the nature of the neuropsychological processes that are involved. This is something that is constantly being studied by psychologists and neurologists and behaviorists. And so they're constantly studying and learning more about this. But in general, it's the mental processes and cognitive abilities such as working memory, impulse inhibition, and reasoning that control the skills like organization, remembering, time management, problem solving that require goal-directed behavior. So if you've ever wondered, like my kid, we've talked about, okay, they've got this big project coming up and then they wait to the last minute and they have no idea what to do and they're totally disorganized and they seem like they're just like, they can't figure out how to get something done. That's executive functioning deficiencies that's manifesting itself. So that's what we're talking about. So like when I put in my newsletter, about today's topic, that if your child is struggling in high school, chances are the reason behind that is executive functioning deficiencies. Which is the good news about that is that they're able to learn. There's not anything cognitively holding them back that they can't learn the material. Teaching executive functioning, that's something we can teach them. We can teach them strategies. They can overcome this once they recognize that this is the problem. So things that we see in teenagers with executive dysfunction. excuse me, poor time management, procrastination, behavioral outbursts, emotional reaction that is greater than the situation, meaning they seem to be like really overreacting to what the situation calls for, poor work completion, an inability to maintain attention to a task, missing information in notes, homework, etc., disorganized paper, school supplies, workspace, living area, impulsive behavior. This may sound familiar. A lot of this is being a teenager. And a lot of our teenagers, like at some time or another, are going to have one or more of these things going on. If it's a consistent thing that you're struggling with, that's when we're talking about, okay, there's probably some executive functioning issues going on. So the impact, some things that can cause this to happen, ADHD. Very, like, if your child has ADHD or you yourself have ADHD, like I just told you, I have ADHD, the executive functioning is something that you're going to struggle with. Autism also, other disorders, like there's various mood disorders, schizophrenia, OCD, you know, there can be some sort of like physical trauma, you know, there's lots of things that could cause issues with executive functioning. Like I said, the one that we primarily see that's the most common in high school is certainly students with ADHD. It's also important to note that this can be a temporary thing, such as mood, lack of sleep, poor diet, not getting sufficient nutrition, they miss breakfast, illness. I shared with you guys that my mother passed away a month ago, and I've been kind of a mess. Like I haven't been sleeping very well. I haven't been taking care of myself. I'm getting back on track. I promise I'm going to be okay. But you know, yeah, like this, like sometimes this can be a temporary thing that you really notice, like, oh, I yesterday, for example, I had to send an email to some staff members, and I meant to BCC them so that they couldn't see who else was on the email, and I forgot to do that. And that's like an executive functioning thing, like where you forget a step, you screw something up. That doesn't mean that that's like a permanent thing. It can be very temporary, but I looked at like the night before, had way too little sleep, and definitely saw the impact on work the next day. But for really what we're going to focus on today, and for the purpose of like, this is a school, and we're talking about your teenagers and their performance in school. So we're going to focus on attention, planning, organization, task initiation, time management, and self-regulation. These 6 areas are the 6 areas, like if your child can conquer these 6 areas, I guarantee they'll be successful in school. Like these 6 are like what they need. These are like, when we talk about the skills you need to be successful in high school, these 6 are what you need. So attention. So there's a lot of text on here, so I'm not going to read all of this to you. But attention obviously is like how you focus on an issue. And so it can be broken down into 2 categories: controlled attention and automatic attention. Controlled attention involves actively sustaining attention on something where you have to pay attention to something. For like, the student is sitting in the classroom and they're paying attention, and they're having to pay attention to the teacher's lecture. That's controlled attention. Automatic attention is involuntary. It's driven by our more primitive parts of the brain. So like things that we notice and remember, and like things that capture our attention, that's more automatic attention. So how does this all work together with working memory and inhibition? Working memory and inhibition are often, used in definitions of executive functioning. They're strongly associated with controlled attention. So working memory may be defined as the ability to temporarily store and manipulate information. So you learn something in class, and then you're able to recall it and use it for the tester for some sort of task that they have to do in the class. Inhibition is the act of blocking or delay of a response to a stimulus. So working memory and controlled attention are so intertwined that many executive functioning interventions utilize tasks to improve working memory in order to improve controlled attention. Like, so, but basically what that means is they're like totally connected. And so if we're working on one, then we're working on the other. So this is something that, as our children grow up, you notice this as like when you have a small child versus a teenager. This is something that they develop. Obviously, a small child does not have the attention span that an older child will, or an adult will, for that matter. As the prefrontal cortex develops most prominently in adolescence, we can expect to see greater ability to sustain attention with age. So if you child is a freshman, like my child right now, my son is a freshman in high school, I have seen improvements in his memory and his ability to have controlled attention. I have seen improvements over recent years, certainly like when I compare it to the way he was in like 4th or 5th grade. Yes, I see improvements, and I can continue to expect to see improvements throughout high school. And honestly, throughout young adulthood too. Like the prefrontal cortex is not finished developing until they're about 24, 25 years old. So this is something that will continue to develop as they get into like their college age. One thing to keep in mind, kids that have ADHD, they are up to 30% delayed in developing these skills. Right, 30% delayed. So when you see your child with ADHD and they're struggling in school, yeah, they're like, they need extra effort and extra support, which is why we do things like writing 504 plans to be able to give them the additional supports that they need because they are delayed in this area. Thanks. Sorry, I'm like looking at the chat too. Sorry. Okay, so planning, mental processing, and subsequent actions taken to reach an desired goal. They have a project coming up. They know that they have to like create a presentation or whatever they have to do. They have to do the research for the project. Planning means that like, I know I have this thing coming up. I'm going to do these steps. I'm going to take care of it a little bit every day. That's ideally what we want to do. So developmentally appropriate planning in adolescence involves short-term planning, such as writing down daily homework, to long-term planning, monitoring grades, choosing, the courses they want to take. So when we have like making them make their 4-year plan, I'm going to take these courses in high school. That's us like helping them with their long-term planning. Some students really struggle with this. And so that's when we have to not just like leave it up to them to talk about the different steps that they want to do in a project. So a common accommodation that we make in a plan for a student that is suffering from executive functioning issues and struggles with planning is we may tell the teacher, break down larger projects and assignment into smaller steps so that they don't just say like, here's the project, figure it out. The teacher figures out, okay, you have to do this step first, and then this and this and this. So that's where you see planning manifest itself. So as a parent, to improve planning, utilize checklists. That is something, you see all of my post-it notes. This is how I manifest. I've got my little like electronic planner. I have lists if I have a lot of stuff going on and a lot of things I will make a to-do list for the day. And like, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. Using a whiteboard or a monthly calendar to help students plan for projects, tests, assignments in advance. If you guys have ever been in my office, oh my gosh, I'm going to make you, I don't know if you can see that. I've got my wall calendar. It's my 2-month calendar so that I can keep track of like school events and everything that's going to be happening for the next 2 months. So and I've got my Google Calendar where I keep track of appointments. If something is not on my calendar, it's not going to happen because I won't remember to do it. So this is like one way, like I told you, I have ADHD and this is like how I manage it. I make sure that I put things on my calendar. If I have a task that I need to get done, I will put it in my calendar. And sometimes you guys, I mean, to be completely and like overshare, sometimes I literally have to put down in my calendar 10 a.m. pay your bills because I keep forgetting to do it. And so I like those are the things that like I just know that I have to do that, and I keep track of it. And so teaching, if your child struggles with remembering to do tasks and like struggles with planning out things, using a calendar and helping them map out, okay, you got to do this, you got to do this, you get this. This is a great way to do this. We give the paper planners, sometimes a paper planner is good. I personally have moved away from paper planners, and now I just use my Google Calendar. It's on my phone. I'm more electronic based now, but like that's a personal preference. And a lot of the strategies that I will talk about today, it's personal preference, and whatever works for them. And so there's what I like about the high school age and figuring this out, and what I like about talking about this and learning about this is to help them figure out different strategies that could work for them. So that when they go to college, they know. One thing that I've talked about this a lot, and probably not with you guys, but I've talked about it with my colleagues. Since I became an administrator, this is my third role in the administrative realm. So I was the AP in charge of discipline for Independence High School way back when. I was the AP in charge of curriculum and scheduling at Santa Teresa High School. And then I became the principal of Piedmont Hills High School. In each of those three different roles, I had to manage my day and manage my tasks in different ways, and how based on what my job was. And so I had to kind of like think about how I organize myself and organize like my to-do list and what I need to, and like keeping track of what I need to get done. I've had to shift how I do that. So I think that's an important thing also to teach our kids, that they may find that one way works for the class that they're in this year, but next year when they're in a different class, the exact same process and strategies may not work the same. And so they may have to shift a little bit and figure out, okay, what's going to work for how this class is organized. And so now we're going to organization. Organization, of course, is the ability to impose information, materials, all of that. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to close the box on my screen. Basically keep your stuff organized. If you have a child that has papers shoved at the bottom of their backpack, organization is probably something that they need a little help with. Organization, it says right here, is closely linked to planning. So deficits in organization are common among students who exhibit difficulty with planning. And a lot of that is like, and it's not that they're forgetful, but like literally what they're doing is they're forgetting, but they're not doing it on purpose. They're not doing it because they want to forget, but it's executive functioning. Their brain's like not clicking the right way. So, they may like put that project, explanation and assignment, shove it down in the bottom of their backpack, and then it's out of sight, out of mind. So this is really, really typical. Like if they have difficulty with planning, organization is probably something that they're also struggling with. So tips to improve organization. And so this is stuff that you can do at home and help your child do this at home. Create a designated space for school materials. So where do they tend to do their homework? Is it in their room? Is it in a different part of the house? My son does not do any homework in his bedroom. He actually doesn't even like to sleep in his bedroom. He likes to sleep on the couch. He's weird. But like so where does he do his work? And like that's where we make sure that we've got extra pens and like other, school materials, the paper and all of that. Create a designated time to organize materials, like go through. And this is something, especially if you've got a freshman, that transition year, you as the parent coming in and really supporting them, you're going to have to do a lot more heavy lifting, but like sit down with them, go through that backpack, get all those papers out and organize them in a binder and figure out where they need to go. Help your child create a checklist of necessary materials. If they've got a big project coming up, like, do you need extra materials? Do you need to get poster board? Because like the last thing you want is it be 9:30 at night and they're like, I have to make a poster for tomorrow. Can you imagine? No, that's awful. So, but figuring out the materials, anything that you need to do, create a homework routine and try to stick to that routine as much as possible, because routine is something that's very, very helpful with kids with executive functioning deficiencies. Model organized skills at home. Like, do you have a place, like we talked about, like paying the bills? Like, do you have a place where you keep all the bills, or are they scattered throughout the house? Praise them for good organization skills. If they happen to put a piece of paper in a binder and not at the bottom of their backpack, praise them for that. So in school, these are things that you can ask for as accommodations. Teachers can use graphic organizers, different types of charts, guided notes, explicit instruction of what they need. Breaking, like we talked about, breaking those projects down into smaller bits. Those are all things that teachers could do to help with this. All right, task initiation. Task initiation involves the ability to initiate and independently start a task. It can include various skills, including independently generating ideas, solving problems, responding to instructions without needing or with limited support. If your child struggles with task initiation, they may need reminders from adults, from a teacher, or from you as the parent to start a task. They may, oh, I think we're about to have an earthquake. Did you guys just get an alert on your phone?
Yes, we just got the notification as well.
Well, okay, we're all prepared. I don't feel anything. Sorry about that. So they may delay chores. They may put off their homework. And then they're like staying up late and finishing it, and it's like a big struggle. They may frequently ask for help, even with simple tasks. Like that's like, so they're like constantly asking the teacher, I don't know what to do. Can you help me? They may engage, especially in high school, we see more of this, where they engage in problem behavior to escape or avoid tasks, meaning kids that like wander around the school and wander around the hallways and they don't want to stay in class. They may be struggling with task initiation, and they get like, are struggling to get that work started. So it's easier for them to be like, I'm going to go like wander the hallways. It's typical for adolescents to avoid some non-preferred tasks for a certain amount of time. Nobody wants to take out the trash. Like that's normal behavior. But when it's like, so when this difficulty of task initiation is impeding the ability to the point where they're like suffering in school, like if they put off writing a paper, okay, yeah, that's typical. But if they actually get it done, then okay. But if they're putting it off and then like they're not turning it in, they're actually doing it, like it's getting to like, well, now they didn't turn in the assignment. That's when you need to start worrying about this. And then you need to start getting in some more support. So to improve task initiation, breaking down larger assignments into smaller parts. They often perceive work to take longer than it does and to be more difficult than it does. So they may procrastinate. It can help to start with the smallest task to build momentum. One thing, if they have this math assignment and they have to do 20 problems, one thing that can help with this is to say, set a timer. You're going to work on it for 10 minutes, see how many you can get through, and then you can take a break. I love that strategy for like anything, for like any sort of unwanted task, to be like, I'm going to do this for 10 minutes and then I'm going to take a break. And then if the more you can do it, you can like stretch it out and like, maybe I'm going to do it for 15 minutes. So I forget, this is something when I have a task that I don't want to do, like a lot of times as principal, I have to write these big reports and things like that. And I will dread it and procrastinate and like not want to do it. So I will literally do this where I'm going to like, okay, I'm going to work on this for 20 minutes and I will set the timer on my phone and I will do it for 20 minutes. And what I often find, I'll get into it and then my timer will go off and be like, oh, I'm almost done. I'm just going to finish it. So, but like that, when something seems insurmountable, like taking it in little bits, and like, depending on how much your child is struggling with this, you may start with 5 minutes, you may start with 10 minutes and see, how they keep going with this. Other things, motivators, like, like those little rewards, like, hey, if you can do it for 20 minutes, then you can play a video game for 10 minutes. Creating a designated workspace, getting the mindset of working. Back when I was a teacher and I had a stack of essays to grade, I used to have to go to a Starbucks, and I would sit in a Starbucks for like 5 hours, and I would get my coffee and I would sit in the corner and I would grade, but I had to have like a different space in order to get stuff done. So sometimes that may be something that they need like a different space to be like, okay, I'm going to be working now. Certainly reducing distractions, providing breaks with an end time. So if you say like, okay, you're going to be able to, like, you worked for 20 minutes and you're going to be able to play a video game, put an end time for the video game. They get to play a video game for 10 minutes. And so set another timer, because otherwise they're going to be playing that video game for 2 hours. You might have to start the assignment with them and, reading the instructions, figuring out what you have to do, and then like start them and then let them keep going on their own. Okay, next issue is time management. Time management obviously refers to a broad set of skills related to understanding time and how to use time effectively. So it's skills that relate to how we use our time and how that use impacts ourselves and others around us. So kids with good time management skills, they understand how long a task will take. They're also able to budget time effectively and complete routines with ease. So it's our capacity to estimate time, allocate time, and stay within those time limits. So if they struggle with time management, they may think that a task is going to take them 30 minutes, but then it ends up taking them 2 hours. And so they're not good at, like estimating. And a lot of times where we see this, it's not so much that they think an assignment is going to take that time, but how much time is it going to take them to do powder puff practice? It's the other stuff outside of the academic life, like time with like they're doing with their clubs and their extracurricular activities, and not managing that time and seeing like, oh, but I also need to do this. That's where you see time management struggles. So ways that you can help with time management: create checklists, estimate how long each task will take, break longer assignments into chunks, assign time frames for completing each one, using calendars to keep track of long-term assignments, due dates, chores, activities, write a due date at the top of each assignment. So if you have a kid that's, in a lot of clubs, does sports, does a lot of activities, and then they're struggling with keeping up with all of their assignments and everything too, using a calendar to map out, okay, you're gonna spend this much time doing this much time doing this much time doing this. One thing that teenagers, and especially our overachieving teenagers, forget to put in with this is they forget to block off when they need to sleep. And so reminding them that they need at least 8 hours of sleep is also really important, because especially super high achieving kids that, want to do all of the activities, they really struggle with this. And so that sleep part, because sleep is very, very important. Because like we talked about before, that can cause, lack of sleep is one of the like main things that can cause those temporary deficiencies in executive functioning skills. Okay, self-regulation. Self-regulation is basically the part of us that says, I am not going to behave in this way because I know it will have this consequence. So it also involves the ability to delay gratification. So I'm going to wait to eat the cookie until it's cooled off, or I'm going to I'm going to finish this task and then I will have this reward, rather so like waiting to play the video game until after they finish their homework. That is self-regulation. So difficulty with self-regulation, emotional impulsivity, low frustration tolerance, mood changes, temper outbursts, disproportionate anger, frustration. These are all things that are issues with self-regulation. To improve self-regulation, scaffold response, verbally process events with your child, helping them create an inner script and appropriate behavior response. So something happens, talking through them, talking through, you know, what happened, how did they react, and if they could do over, you know, making that like inner script and like what, if they could do the situation over, like how would they have responded differently? Asking them to label their emotions. How are they feeling? Are they feeling frustrated? Are they feeling sad? Are they feeling scared? You know, and helping them verbalize all of this. Utilize reflective practice when the child is not in the throes of emotion. Like sometimes you have to get them like through their like the emotional like trauma event right then, and then reflect on it later. But teaching them some mindfulness practices, like even at that moment, teaching them that if they are super angry and they're feeling like they're going to burst, being able to go like walk away and take a 10-minute walk, doing things like counting to 10, you know, doing things that they can bring themselves down in the moment are great skills to teach. And we will have, I'll have like, this is the topic that we'll talk about in like different Zooms, different ways that you can do this. But then you have, this is where a lot of the mindfulness stuff, and I am a big believer in mindfulness, but you know, doing, you know, mindfulness activities like meditation, doing yoga. I've started doing a lot more yoga, and I'm becoming, I used to hate it, but I'm becoming a fan. It's, I don't know if your teenager wants to do yoga. They might, who knows? But like things like doing a meditation, sometimes like they can be into that, and doing some things to help regulate their emotions. A lot of times they are receptive to that. So adolescents will exhibit poor decision making and difficulty with self-regulations at time. This is typical and to be expected. Every single teenager is going to, at some point or another, exhibit a poor decision-making skill. They will have difficulty with self-regulations at times. So that, like, I want you, like, no matter what, every single student out there on the campus is going to go through this. That is total normal teenage behavior. When it becomes like kind of a constant like where it's like happening all of the time, that's when it becomes more worrisome. But one thing to remember, like that, like we talk about the frontal lobe, and like that's like, you know, where like our decision making and how we control, like that's where all this is. This is not completely developed until adulthood, about age 25. This is not, they like their brains can't always do this. And so we have to, as the parents, even though it can be super difficult, is be understanding of that and support them through this, because they're not there yet, and they're not supposed to be, because their brain isn't developed yet. So recommendations that benefit all of the executive functioning skills: modeling, scaffolding. So modeling meaning you are setting up and you are showing like the way that you organize yourself, and like you have an organized house, and like you are modeling this behavior. Like this is how, especially if you struggle with some of this also, like showing that like I've talked to my kids, I have to use my calendar. I put everything in my calendar. Like that's what I need to do. So like showing them like what you do to overcome struggles that you may have. Scaffolding, breaking down, you know, little bigger tasks into smaller bits. If you want them to clean their room and it's a disaster and there's like things everywhere, if your house is like my house and you have Legos all over the house, because my 14-year-old has not grown out of the Legos and they're still everywhere, and I need him to clean them up, starting with, okay, let's clean off this table. Like let's deal with this part right now, and rather than all of it. Creating a routine, like homework is done at the same time, every day, and like sticking to that routine. You go to bed at the same time every night. You get up at the same time every day. Creating those routines helps. It helps them tremendously. And consistency, because like consistency means like the more that they do this and the more that they do these skills, like if you consistently go through their binder with them and go through their backpack and consistently do that, they will actually start doing it on their own. Like that's so the more that you're consistent with this, the more that they're going to develop these skills and start doing them on their own. Okay, I am going to stop sharing my screen. Hold on first, I gotta get out of this. So, exit, and then I'll stop sharing my screen. There you are. Okay, so that was the presentation. I'm sorry, that was a lot of talking. But I am hoping that that was helpful. Like I said before, executive functioning skills, like they are like really like when we get down to like when students are struggling, it like 9 times out of 10 is going to fall into some sort of executive functioning deficiency. And so figuring out where that deficiency is and like what they're really struggling with will help develop strategies on this is what we can do to combat that. And so a lot of times, like when I'm, meeting with students or I'm meeting with parents and they're struggling, like we'll really dig into, okay, what's the struggle? Are you having a hard time getting started, or are you distracted? Like, or you like, are you unorganized? Like what is going on? And so then that way we can help come up with the skills to address that. So again, just to sum up, when I was like looking through the different, and I'm sorry, I'm going to find the right video. And when I send out the link that I really meant to show you guys, I will send out the link to the video that I want to show you. The one that would end up playing was not the one I wanted to show you. So I'm going to find the one. But basically executive functioning is, I heard this phrase and I really liked it. It's like the CEO of your brain. It's like what makes your brain do the things that it's supposed to do, that you want it to do. So it's the part of your brain that takes you from wanting to do something to actually doing it. Another way of saying, I heard like another thing that I read was it helps us become an adult. And so that's why when we talk about our teenager and like they grow up and they mature and you're like, wow, they've matured so much. A lot of times what they've done is they've conquered those executive functioning skills and they're able to like do the stuff that we have to do as an adult, like pay our bills. Okay, any questions about this? Hopefully this was helpful. If you find that your child is really struggling where you're concerned, reach out to us. There's different things that we do. I had mentioned 504 plans. We don't automatically jump to a 504 plan, but we can like what we'll do is like, if you have a concern, we'll talk as a team about that. We'll reach out to the teachers and see what's going on. And kind of a lot of times, like we want to have students in what's known as the least restrictive environment. And so we'll like come up with all of the ways that we can support a child before we go into having a 504 plan, because that's a legal document that then follows them and it follows them to college. And then that may be what they need, but it may be that they don't need that. And so we just need to make like some tweaks in the classroom and how teachers are doing things. And then we can do that. So Tiffany put in, and it was just to me, who should we reach out first if we have concerns? Honestly, the best contact for your first level is probably the academic counselor, and reaching out to the academic counselor, and the academic counselor will then know, and like they will ask the right questions and know, okay, this is what we need to do and who we need to go to get more support. So I would say definitely the academic counselor is a really great first step. If you have concerns about how your child's doing. Okay. This is usually the time I tell you what our topic is for next week. So next week is the last week of October, and the last week of October nationally is what's known as Red Ribbon Week. And so that's the week of like drug and alcohol awareness, where we like do things as a school and hand out red ribbons and all that stuff. So in light of it being Red Ribbon Week, that's actually going to be our topic for next Wednesday's Zoom with the principal. Every year I have somebody come out and they explain the latest technology with vaping, because every year they say something different and there's new things out there that parents need to be aware of. And so next week is when we're going to be talking about that. So it's really important to know, because you may not realize what your child's doing. I certainly didn't. My daughter was doing all sorts of things that I didn't know she was doing. And I'm an expert at this. So believe me, if she can fool me, any kid can fool their parents. So that's what our topic is next week. I hope that you found this helpful. I feel like I talked the entire time, which I did. So hopefully this was helpful to all of you. And when I send out the recording of this, I will also send out the slides, and I will send out the right video that I meant to show. And yeah, because there's a lot of information on those slides, and I just glossed over because I didn't want to just read you the slides because that's super boring. But there's a lot of information, so you may want to go through and read that on your own. Okay, well, thank you guys. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and you stay cool. It's going to be weird weather this week. It's supposed to be 90 degrees tomorrow, but then it's supposed to get cool again. And hopefully then we actually have real fall. But we've got a couple warm days. Okay. All right. Thank you guys.